Rolling Stone chief political reporter Matt Taibbi has been compared to Hunter S. Thompson, but Taibbi has a different opinion. Our producer Tucker Ives sat down with him when he visited Ithaca last week.
To begin, it sounds like your name is always used in comparison to Hunter S. Thompson. What is your reaction to that comparison?
I understand it. I write for Rolling Stone. I've written about taking drugs. I'm a comic. I write in the first person. I've covered the presidential campaign. All these things are superficial similarities. So, I actually have Hunter Thompson's job, So I understand that, but our writing, I think, is very, very different. I think Hunter Thompson's writing was extremely ambitious in ways that mine isn't.
Do you find yourself having trouble getting interviews with people, getting access to information because of your previous work and the fact that you're working for Rolling Stone?
Rolling Stone isn't so much a problem, although, access is kind of a relative thing. I used to work for a truly alternative press where, I couldn't get an interview with anybody, when I was my own boss and I had my own newspaper in Russia, I basically had to con people into even talking to me or pretend that I worked for somebody else or something. And that, Rolling Stone now, if I call up Congress and I ask for an interview with a congressperson, usually I'll get it, or the difference is that when the New York Times or the Washington Post calls up some major company like Goldman Sachs and says, we're doing a story on X and we want somebody from your corporate officers to talk to us, well, they will, because they are afraid of the New York Times and they're afraid of the Wall Street Journal.
Back in September, you wrote an article about Sarah Palin right after the Republican National Convention. And you said, quote, "The most disgusting thing about her is what she says about us, that you can ram us in the for 8 solid years, and we'll not only thank you for your trouble, we'll sign you up for 8 more years, if only you promise to stroke us in the right spot for a few hours around election time." Do you find yourself more frustrated with the politicians or the American people?
That's an interesting question. It's both. Obviously, anybody who's in power is going to do whatever they can to maintain power. And we in the United States, the sort of ruling class has a very sophisticated and very subtle mechanism for maintaining its status, and that includes this whole system of commercial media. It includes this, the campaign finance system, which heavily favors, candidates who are friendly to rich companies and that sort of thing. It's very intricate and very complicated, and you almost can't blame them for giving us these cheap huckster candidates like Sarah Palin, and in a way, it's almost more disappointing that the ordinary American doesn't demand more out of his politicians. I find myself, after covering presidential politics long enough, almost being more disappointed with people, And I think I run into these people all the time who are like, well, I've got $20,000 in credit card debt, and I've been laid off, and because of NAFTA, my job is now in Mexico, and but I'm going to vote Republican because of the X, Y, and Z. They don't make the connection that the bankruptcy bill got passed by this person or the NAFTA got passed by that person. All they care about is, does this candidate stroke my cultural prejudices or not? And that's very, very frustrating, and there's nothing really we can do about it. We just have to wait for Americans to get burned enough that they learn to support candidates who actually represent their interests. But
where's the mainstream media gone wrong, in your opinion?
Where hasn't it gone wrong? And I talked a little bit about this in that meeting with, back when I was a kid, and my father was coming up, and he's a TV journalist. Journalists were like tradesmen. They were mostly middle to working class guys who sort of grew up in the newspaper world or the TV world, and they learned their job as a trade, and they had this kind of iconoclastic relationship to power. They saw themselves as the last sort of barrier to preventing politicians from putting one over on the regular guy. And somewhere along the line, that whole situation changed, and the media became this kind of elitist affectation where a lot of rich kids who went to Ivy League universities would get out, and basically journalism was a way for them to hang around powerful people, you know, and see the world. And that's not the way it's supposed to be. Journalism is supposed to be the fourth estate. It's supposed to play a very, very important role in preventing government abuses, and we just don't do that anymore.
Thanks, Tucker. We'll be bringing you more of that interview with Rolling Stone writer Matt Taibbi later on the show.